From 1929 to 1933, Germany was in a state of crisis, crippled by insurmountable war debt, with unemployment soaring, prices for basic materials and foodstuffs rising exponentially, and political divisions deepening. The German people were tired of the failures of their democratic government, the Weimar Republic. They were primed for new leadership and new ideas. Against this backdrop, the NSDAP, or Nazi Party, capitalized on fear and discontent, flooding public spaces with posters and hosting increasingly large rallies with a charismatic speaker promising a return to greatness. Today, as modern societies grapple with economic and social crises, similar tactics have re-emerged in the digital realm. In the 1920s and 30s, the Nazi Party used propaganda to shape public opinion and consolidate power. Today, in the digital age, media manipulation takes on new forms. This video explores how the lessons of Nazi propaganda inform modern trends and what they could mean for the future. The Nazi Party's propaganda machine began long before they seized power in 1933. Newspapers like Der Stürmer, a publication owned and operated by senior Nazi official Julius Streicher, were cheap, widely distributed, and full of sensationalism, designed to dehumanize Jewish people, attack communists, stoke public fear, and provide ready-made scapegoats for the German people. Joseph Goebbels, the mastermind of Nazi propaganda, flooded cities with posters, pamphlets, and tailored messages. Nazi rallies became spectacles, showcasing unity and strength. Emotional appeals, fear of communism, economic instability, and national humiliation were at the core of their messaging. Fast forward to today. Social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter amplify ideological narratives, while their algorithms favor polarizing content. For example, during the 2016, 2020, and 2024 U.S. presidential elections, X, formerly Twitter, trending topics frequently highlighted divisive hashtags driven by coordinated bot activity. In recent years, ideological accounts have gained prominence, often supported by algorithmic amplification that prioritizes engagement over factual accuracy. Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter has turned it into a modern battleground for influence. Reduced moderation has allowed for the magnification of divisive content, creating digital echo chambers. Meanwhile, TikTok, a platform elevating grassroots and marginalized voices, faces potential bans over alleged but unsubstantiated national security concerns. As with the Nazis' labeling of dissenting voices as un-German, this suppression removes spaces for alternative perspectives. But media manipulation doesn't occur in isolation. In their 1988 book, Manufacturing Consent, Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman explore how media systems inherently favor the powerful. Chomsky and Herman's 5 filters, ownership, advertising, sourcing, flack, and ideology, lay the foundation for modern media control. The ownership filter refers to media outlet control by a handful of wealthy conglomerates, able to shape narratives to align with their interests. For example, Comcast's ownership of NBC Universal, including outlets like NBC News and MSNBC, ensures coverage aligns with corporate interests and avoids criticism of practices that could impact its subsidiaries or parent company. The advertising filter ensures that content remains palatable to sponsors, who are themselves wealthy conglomerates, discouraging coverage that could alienate them. For example, in 2009, after investigative reporting on the environmental impact of certain SUVs, advertising pressure from major automotive manufacturers reportedly influenced editorial decisions to scale back critical stories about emissions and climate change on prominent networks. The sourcing filter reveals the reliance on government and corporate sources, often leading to an echo chamber of official narratives, such as major networks airing unchallenged government briefings during crises. The flack filter describes the pushback and threats faced by media outlets when they challenge powerful entities. For example, investigative journalists at CBS faced intense criticism and legal threats after their reporting on the tobacco industry in the 1990s exposed the dangers of smoking and corporate cover-ups, demonstrating how powerful industries use their influence to deter damaging stories. Finally, the ideology filter frames the overarching societal norms that dictate what is considered acceptable, further marginalizing alternative perspectives. For example, during the 2018 teachers' strikes in states like West Virginia and Oklahoma, media coverage often framed the protests as disruptive to students and families, focusing on logistical challenges rather than the systemic underfunding of public education, thereby reinforcing narratives aligned with capitalist ideals. Each filter reinforces the others, creating a system that prioritizes control over truth. Today's platforms inherit these biases, making them ripe for weaponization. In 1933, after the Nazi Party took control of the German government, propaganda strategy shifted from persuasion to control. Joseph Goebbels' Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda centralized radio and film media production. Newspapers came under strict state oversight, and reporters were provided with instructions on which stories to publish and in which form at the daily Reich press briefings. The ministry eliminated independent journalism, and dissenting voices were silenced. Today's media landscape shows increasing consolidation. Though not controlled by the state, corporate ownership dominates, and platforms like Facebook and X, formerly Twitter, play outsized roles in shaping discourse on current events. But the parallels don't end there. Consider modern book bans. Titles are being restricted by conservative school boards and legislators for content that addresses themes of gender exploration, sexuality, racial injustice, and more. For example, genderqueer was removed from Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia following complaints about its LGBTQ+ content. Similarly, The Bluest Eye was banned in some districts in Texas, citing its depiction of sensitive themes. These bans are emblematic of a broader movement to restrict access to diverse and challenging narratives, stifling critical dialogue and denying students exposure to important, unconventional perspectives. These works, however, hold deep historical and cultural significance. Genderqueer provides a vital perspective on the journey of self-discovery and identity, opening pathways for understanding marginalized voices. The Bluest Eye, a classic by Toni Morrison, delves into themes of systemic racism and the internalization of societal beauty standards, challenging readers to confront uncomfortable truths about race and privilege. The removal of such books stifles critical dialogue and denies students access to diverse narratives essential for a well-rounded education. The Nazis used similar tactics, branding literature and art as degenerate to justify their suppression. Intervention by foreign actors also plays a disturbing role in media manipulation. During the Nazi rise, wealthy foreign émigrés funded the NSDAP and introduced Hitler to German high society, enabling the printing of millions of leaflets and posters and magnifying the Nazi platform. The scale of the operations gave the fledgling party an air of legitimacy, even when its active membership was relatively low. Today, bot networks amplify disinformation, creating illusions of consensus and stoking division. A striking example of this was the Russian influence campaign leading up to the 2016 US presidential election. Through coordinated bot activity and fake accounts, Russian operatives spread divisive content, targeting key demographics with misinformation designed to exploit societal fractures. This campaign, operated largely through platforms like Facebook and Twitter, demonstrated the power of bots to manipulate public opinion on a massive scale at a nominal financial cost. In 2022, conservative American think tank, the Heritage Foundation published Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership, a strategic blueprint for governance with a narrow ideological agenda. Under the plan, the federal government would undergo significant restructuring to align with traditionalist, Christian nationalist ideologies. Proposals include consolidating executive power, dismantling diversity initiatives, eliminating the Department of Education, and tightening control over media narratives. Adoption of at least some of these proposals under the second Trump administration is likely. There is historical precedent for what could happen if the mandate for leadership is largely implemented. Ian Kershaw, in his book Hitler, 1889 to 1936, Hubris, describes the period of Nazification in the months following Hitler's ascent to the chancellorship. The process of coordination occurred rapidly and often without explicit instructions from the regime. Institutions, professional organizations, and social clubs voluntarily aligned themselves with Nazi ideology, eager to demonstrate loyalty and avoid falling out of favor. A similar dynamic could play out today after implementation of Project 2025 proposals. Schools might preemptively revise curricula to emphasize patriotic values, sidelining critical or diverse perspectives to avoid funding cuts. Civic organizations and corporations might publicly embrace state-supported ideologies to maintain their status or financial stability, effectively creating a self-reinforcing system of conformity. Social media platforms, facing fines or regulatory scrutiny, could prioritize content aligned with government narratives. Algorithms may quietly suppress dissent by amplifying patriotic themes and obscuring alternative views, creating an environment where dissent becomes not only unpopular but unseen. Media corporations may be forced to toe the line, with licenses or ad revenue at risk if they deviate from state-aligned messaging. This rapid alignment would result in a chilling effect across society. Public discourse narrows, voices of opposition are silenced, and an echo chamber of conformity takes hold. But resistance is possible. Transparency and accountability are key. Grassroots efforts, such as community-led fact-checking initiatives and citizen journalism, independent outlets like ProPublica that investigate stories often overlooked by mainstream media, and decentralized platforms like Mastodon that prioritize user-driven content over algorithmic curation can effectively challenge these trends. The tools of manipulation are powerful, but so are the tools of resistance. Stay critical, stay informed, demand better from our media and our leaders, because the fight for truth begins with us.